Tonight, prepare to enter a world filled with mystery and fear. But before we begin, leave a comment and tell me, what country are you watching from? I want to know which corners of the world this horror story is reaching. The rain started just as I turned off the main road, soft at first, like a whisper brushing against the windshield. The village was smaller than I remembered, emptier. Trees leaned toward the narrow road, their branches skeletal and dripping. Every twist and turn brought a new wave of memory, thick with silence and the smell of wet earth. The house stood where it always had, at the edge of the woods, wrapped in ivy and shadow. Nothing had changed, not the sagging roof, not the rusted wind chimes that clinked in the wind like bones. I killed the engine and sat in the car for a moment, listening to the steady rhythm of rain on the roof. It felt wrong being here, but I got out anyway. The front steps creaked under my weight. I fumbled with the key. It stuck, like the door was reluctant to open. When it finally did, the scent of old wood and dust poured out. Cold air wrapped around me, as if the house exhaled after holding its breath for years. Inside it was quiet, too quiet. Furniture draped in white sheets lined the living room, ghost-like in the gloom. The floor groaned with each step. I pulled the sheets off one by one, revealing familiar pieces. The rocking chair, the old cabinet with cracked glass, the grandfather clock that hadn't worked in years. I told myself I was just here to settle things, clean up, sort through what was left behind, but something felt off. In the bedroom, I found one of her old journals. The leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. I didn't mean to read it, but my hands opened it on their own. "It only rains when he's near," the entry read. I saw him again, tall, still, just beyond the trees, watching. I stared at the words until the ink seemed to bleed. Then, a tap, software barely there, another. I turned slowly. There was something at the window. No movement, just a shape. Human, but not quite. Blurred by the rain, too tall, its head tilted as if curious. I didn't move. Neither did it. Then it was gone. I stood frozen for what felt like hours. I didn't sleep that night. The storm howled and scratched at the walls. Every creak of the house made my skin crawl. And just as I began to drift off, I heard it. A voice, not loud, not sharp, but there, whispering through the rain, through the walls, maybe from inside my own head. "You came back. You shouldn't have." The next morning, the rain hadn't stopped. It hadn't even slowed. It poured relentlessly, a gray curtain outside every window, drowning the world in sound. I stood by the sink, staring into the yard. The trees swayed violently. The earth was soaked to its bones. I made coffee, though it tasted like ash. Maybe the old grounds, maybe something else. My stomach twisted with unease. I hadn't eaten since I arrived, but hunger didn't come. Just a hollow feeling that grew in my chest. Something was wrong with the house. It wasn't just the creaks or the cold spots, or the way the lights flickered when I passed certain rooms. It was the feeling, like I was being watched. Not constantly, but at intervals. Like whatever it was needed to blink. That's when I heard the thud. Not loud, not sudden, just heavy. From below. I turned toward the hall. The basement door, it stood ajar. I didn't remember leaving it open. My feet moved before I could stop them. I stood at the top of the stairs, heart pounding, the air suddenly colder. The darkness below looked thick, impossible. Like if I stepped down, it would swallow me whole. I reached for the light switch. Nothing. Of course. I went back to the kitchen, found an old flashlight in the drawer. It flickered when I turned it on, but held steady after a few hits against the counter. Back at the door, I hesitated, then descended. Each step creaked beneath me. The flashlight's beam wavered. The air was damp, heavy, moldy. It smelled like old earth and wet rot. I shivered. At the bottom, the light caught something. A figure. I gasped and dropped the flashlight. It clattered across the floor, spinning. It was just a coat rack. Old. draped in a moth-eaten blanket. I exhaled slowly, heart still racing. But then I heard it again. Whispers, right behind me. I spun around, nothing there. Just cold, wet air. The whispers faded, melting into the sound of rain above. But as I reached for the flashlight, I noticed something etched into the concrete wall. Scratched, not written. Don't trust the reflections. I backed away, left the light behind, slammed the basement door shut and slid the lock in place. It didn't make me feel safer. Nothing did. And that night, I dreamed of water rising beneath the floorboards, and the man in the rain standing just outside my window, smiling, waiting. I avoided the basement after that. The door stayed locked, and I forced myself to ignore the scratching sounds I sometimes heard in the late hours. Instead, I focused on the upper floors, cleaning, sorting, pretending I was still in control. It was around noon when I found the mirror. It had always been there, I think, tall and narrow, framed in tarnished silver, hanging in the second-floor hallway between the guest rooms. But somehow, I hadn't noticed it until then. Maybe the dust had concealed it. Maybe something else had. I stood in front of it, studying my reflection. At first, it looked normal. Me, tired and pale, the rain-slick window behind me, and the hallway stretching in both directions. But then my reflection blinked. Only I hadn't. I stepped back. It blinked again, then smiled. A slow, wide smile I didn't feel. My knees went weak. I turned away, heart hammering, and ran downstairs. My breath came in sharp bursts. I refused to look at any reflective surface. The windows, the kettle, the old television screen. I kept my eyes down. But the rain made it harder. Everything shone. Everything mirrored. That night I taped a blanket over the hallway mirror. I didn't want to see it again, not even by accident. But in the dark, I heard the tape peeling, one slow strip at a time. I lay still in bed, holding my breath, listening. Then I heard it. Laughter, my laughter, from upstairs. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay still, eyes locked on the ceiling, counting the seconds between thunderclaps, pretending the laughter hadn't happened, pretending the sound of slow, padded footsteps above me was just the house settling. But it wasn't. At some point in the night, the rain intensified, shifting from a steady rhythm to a full assault. It sounded like 1,000 nails tapping the windows. Wind screamed through the trees like something alive. When morning came, if I could even call it that, the sky was a dim sheet of gray. No sunlight pierced the clouds. The rain had no intention of letting up. I sat at the table with a cold cup of coffee, trembling. My reflection in the window didn't match my movements again. Not perfectly, I tried not to look. Then I heard the noise again, scraping. Not from the basement this time, but from upstairs, the hallway. I stood, my knees stiff and unsteady. Each step up the staircase was reluctant, as if my own body tried to turn me back. But something pulled me forward. A mixture of dread and necessity. The blanket I had taped over the mirror was gone. Not on the floor, just gone. I stared at the mirror. My reflection didn't smile this time. It stared back, eyes wider, darker, like they belonged to someone who had lived here far longer than I had. Then it lifted its hand. Mine didn't. The hand moved toward the glass, and a small crack splintered from the center. Just one. Tiny, but loud. I backed away slowly. That was when I noticed the hallway stretched further than it should. A new door had appeared. It wasn't there before. I was sure of it. Painted black, no handle, no trim. Just a rectangle of darkness embedded in the wall. I should have run, but I stepped closer. Something about it was wrong, visibly wrong. The air around it seemed to blur, as though heat rose from its edges. But it was cold, freezing. I raised my hand and touched it. It gave way like water. I stumbled in before I could stop myself. Total darkness swallowed me. Not the kind of dark that your eyes adjust to. This was something else, thick, a void. I couldn't hear the rain anymore. I couldn't even hear my own breathing. I was just there. Seconds passed, minutes, hours, then light. Not from above, but beneath. a faint blue glow under my feet. I looked down and saw that I stood on water, barely an inch deep, glowing softly. It rippled with every breath I took. And in the distance, figures, not moving, just standing. A dozen of them, maybe more, all facing me. Their features were indistinct, blurred by shadow, but I could feel their attention, their intent. One step forward, closer, and then I saw it. It was me. Not just similar, exact. Same face, same clothes, same scars, but its eyes were entirely black, and its mouth stretched far too wide. "I've been waiting," it said. Its voice sounded like water poured over gravel. "You left me here," it whispered. I turned to run, but there was no door, no edge, just the endless dark and the glowing water and the other versions of me approaching. I screamed, and that's when I woke up, on the hallway floor, cold, wet. The black door was gone. The mirror had splintered completely, as if something had burst through. But I was alone, or at least, I thought I was. Then I saw it, a single footprint on the floor, wet, facing the bedroom, and not mine. I stared at the footprint for a long time. The water still clung to the floorboards, glistening in the dim morning light, as though whoever or whatever had left it was still nearby. It was barefoot, wide, long, toes slightly splayed, and wrong. The proportions were off in a way I couldn't quite explain. The arch too high, the heel too narrow. A footprint that belonged to something trying to be human, but wasn't. I followed the trail slowly. There were more prints now, faint, leading down the hallway toward the bedroom I had been sleeping in. My own room, my refuge. The door was cracked open. The lights inside flickered as I approached. Not the usual faulty wiring kind of flicker, but more like the room itself was holding its breath, uncertain whether it should stay lit or surrender to the dark. I pushed the door open, empty, but the smell was different, damp, earthy, like rainwater left too long in a closed room. And then I saw it, on the bed, a single long strand of hair, wet, black. I ran to the bathroom to wash my face, needing something, anything, to feel real. But when I looked up, I saw not my reflection, but that same version of me from the dark room. The thing with black eyes and the too wide mouth. Only this time, it didn't mimic me. It leaned forward, its hand pressed against the other side of the mirror. A crack formed beneath its palm. Then it whispered, "We remember what you forgot." I screamed and threw the soap dish at the mirror, shattering it into a dozen jagged pieces. The fragments scattered across the sink and floor, but even then, tiny shards continued to reflect that same version of me, grinning, mocking. I ran outside, into the rain. It was thicker than before, colder. The fog had crept in from the woods and now wrapped itself around the house, blurring the edges of the world. Trees became silhouettes. The road was gone. The village, gone. Only the rain remained, and the silence that now felt alive. I wandered toward the edge of the woods, the same place I thought I'd seen the figure from the journal. Every drop of rain stung now like needles. There was something in the trees. I could hear it. Low breathing. I turned. A figure stood between two twisted oaks, tall and unmoving. Rain slid off its silhouette as if it rejected the water. No face, no eyes. But I knew it was watching me. Then it stepped forward. I ran. Branches clawed at my arms. Mud pulled at my shoes, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back until I reached the porch. When I turned, it was gone. But the fog hadn't lifted, and now a second set of wet footprints led up to the door beside mine. I stepped inside, soaked to the bone. The house felt different now, like it had swallowed something, like it was breathing too. And that night I dreamed again. This time I was not myself. I was the thing in the mirror, watching, waiting, remembering, and I liked it. The dream clung to me like wet cloth. I woke gasping, my chest heavy, heart hammering like it had been sprinting for hours. The sheets were damp, not from sweat, from rain. The window was closed, no leaks, no broken glass, And yet the bed was soaked. I stood slowly, my limbs trembling with the weight of unspoken fear. The house was silent again, save for the ever-present hum of the storm outside. The fog remained thick against the windows. The world beyond had faded. I needed answers, some explanation. Even a lie would do. Just something to make sense of the madness unraveling around me. I remembered the attic. I had never liked it, not even as a child. The door was narrow, hidden behind a coat rack in the upstairs hall. I found it again, the wood swollen and damp. It took effort to pull it open. The stairs were steep, the kind that punished every step with an ache in the knees and a whisper of something crawling just out of sight. The attic was darker than the rest of the house, lit only by a single bulb that swung slightly, though the air was still. Dust hung in the air like fog. Cobwebs reached like fingers from beam to beam. Boxes were stacked against the walls, old trunks, forgotten furniture. Everything smelled like time had stopped. I sifted through the boxes, hoping to find something, a journal, letters, photos, anything that might help me understand. And then I found the tapes, old VHS tapes, dozens of them, each labeled with a single date spanning years. I brought the first one downstairs, found an old television with a built-in player, and inserted the tape. Static. Then, the front of the house. The camera was fixed, unmoving. A storm raged, nearly identical to the one outside now. For hours, the tape showed nothing. Then at precisely 3:17 a.m., a figure appeared on the edge of the frame. Tall, motionless, watching. It stood there for 5 full minutes. Then the tape ended. I watched the second tape. Same storm, same time, same figure. Each tape was the same. Each storm, this figure returned. And then I noticed something else. A sound. Low, subtle, playing beneath the footage, beneath the static. A voice. Beneath. I rewound it, played it again, listened closer. Come beneath. Not from the tape, from below the floor. The whisper had returned, except now it was clearer, as if it were growing stronger, closer. I followed the sound, tiptoeing down the hallway. It pulsed through the floorboards like a heartbeat. As I passed the living room, the lights dimmed. I stopped at the basement door, still locked, still sealed, still wrong. But the sound came from beneath it. Something calling, not urgent, not pleading, just there, like someone standing in the dark, repeating your name until you listen. I grabbed the flashlight, unlocked the door, and went down. The air changed with each step, cooler, denser. The stairs groaned beneath me. The bulb at the bottom flickered, casting long shadows that moved when I did not. The basement was mostly empty now, as if something had cleared it out. Then I saw the hatch, a square cut into the floor I hadn't noticed before, slightly ajar, like a trap door to a crawl space. Something was whispering from the other side. I should have run, but I pulled it open. Below was a narrow tunnel descending into the earth. Dirt walls, wood beams, the smell of wet stone and rotting roots, and footprints, dozens, all leading down. I lowered myself into the tunnel. The earth embraced me. The whispers grew louder. They weren't words anymore, just syllables. Sounds I almost understood. Almost. As I crawled, I began to hear other things. The rustle of movement just ahead, the scrape of nails on wood, breathing. And then without warning, I emerged into a small chamber, a room carved from the soil. No lights, no furniture, just a mirror, shaped like the one upstairs, but larger. And inside it, myself. But not just a reflection. This version moved on its own, walked in circles, touched the mirror, watched me. I reached out. It grinned. Then the walls of the chamber began to whisper, all at once. Thousands of voices, all mine, all speaking at once. We are what you buried. We are what you forgot. We are waiting. And then everything went black. When I woke, I was back in my bed, dry, clean, as if nothing had happened. But there was dirt beneath my fingernails, and a handprint, wet and muddy, on the bedroom wall, not mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the handprint. It was smeared along the wall like something had tried to claw its way out, or in. Long fingers, too long. The smudge was almost black, like old soil soaked with water and rot. My first instinct was to scrub it away, to erase it like it had never been there. But something stopped me. The shape felt deliberate, like a warning or a signature. I followed the faint streaks it left behind, trails leading down the hallway again. But this time the house wasn't silent. I could hear rain, of course, but beneath it, layered in the hush of walls too old and too thin, there were murmurs, voices, whispers. I pressed my ear to the hallway wall. The wood was cold, damp, and I heard it, my own voice, speaking phrases I didn't recognize, repeating names I didn't know. Then the lights flickered. The power had been unstable all week, but this time, it was different. They didn't just dim or blink, they pulsed, in rhythm, like a heartbeat. My heartbeat. I went back to the tapes. This time, I chose the one marked with today's date. Though the year was nearly 2 decades ago, the screen lit up with static. Rain pounded on the roof in the footage, matching the storm outside. Then the camera shifted, showing a hallway. My hallway. The footage was in black and white, grainy and warped. A figure appeared on screen, not standing this time, crawling, back arched in unnatural ways, limbs bending wrong. It crawled down the hall and stopped directly in front of the camera. Then slowly, it lifted its head. It was me, but not just me, older, weathered, like someone who had been trapped for years in a place where time didn't work right. It opened its mouth, and I heard it, through the television, through the walls, through the rain. You should not have opened the door. The screen went black. I couldn't breathe. I stepped outside into the downpour, barefoot, soaked instantly. The fog had lifted only slightly, revealing something else. Scars in the ground, long trenches as though fingers had been dragged through the earth. They led from the woods to my house. No footprints, just those deep, clawed marks. I followed them. It was stupid, but something told me I had to. That whatever was happening wasn't just random, that it had roots, that it remembered. The trench led to the old well near the edge of the property. I hadn't approached it in years. As kids, we were told to stay away, that it was unstable, haunted, cursed. I never believed any of that, until now. The well's lid was missing. The stone rim was cracked, moss-covered, and the rope hung limp, snapped. I leaned over the edge. I heard it, breathing. Far below, something inhaled slowly, deeply as though tasting the rain. Then it spoke, not aloud, not in sound, in me. We are under the house. We are under your skin. We are inside the storm. I fell back, gasping, crawling away from the well, mud clinging to my hands and knees. When I reached the house again, the door was open. I hadn't left it that way. Inside, everything had changed. The furniture was old, older than it should be. Dust blanketed every surface, thick as snow. And in the center of the living room was a table, and on it, a single object, a photograph of me as a child, standing in front of this house. But I had never seen that photo before. And in the background, just at the edge of the frame, a tall figure in the window, watching and smiling. The photograph trembled in my hand as if the storm had sunk into the paper itself. I kept staring at the background, the face at the window. Or was it a face? It had the shape, the outline of something humanoid, but the longer I looked, the less certain I became. It was as if the photo shifted when I wasn't looking directly at it, like it didn't want to be seen. The house had changed again. It was subtle at first, pictures slightly askew, furniture not quite where I remembered. The ticking of the clock was slower now, drawn out, each second like a drop of water echoing in a cavern. But then I noticed the most chilling difference. There were no reflections, not in the mirrors, not in the windows, not even on the polished glass of the picture frames. I held the photo next to the bathroom mirror and raised my hand. Nothing. I did not exist. A sound came from behind the wall, a thump, then a dragging noise like something large and wet being pulled across wood. I pressed my ear to the plaster, and I heard it again, breathing, but not just one. Many, dozens, slow, rhythmic, in perfect unison, like a choir of lungs. I backed away. The walls were not just old. They were alive, and they remembered. I turned, and for the briefest moment, I saw movement, a shadow sliding across the hallway floor where no one stood. I followed it, flashlight in hand, beam cutting through the thickening air like fog. Every step felt wrong. The floor groaned underfoot, not as though bearing weight, but responding, reacting. The kitchen was colder than the rest of the house. The storm outside had begun again in earnest. Rain slammed against the windows in horizontal sheets. Lightning flashed, and in the momentary glow, I saw them. Hands. Dozens of handprints pressed against the glass from the outside. They moved. I fell backward, scrambling across the floor. My flashlight flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed me, thick and impenetrable. Then, the humming began, soft at first, like someone humming a lullaby through water. Then louder, closer, inside my ears. I covered them, but it made no difference. I heard her voice, the woman from the mirror. She whispered, "The storm brings them. The house feeds them. And you brought the door." My body went numb. I crawled toward the stairs, not daring to look back, even as I heard footsteps behind me, bare, wet, and many. I reached the second floor, turned into my room, and stopped. The bed was gone, replaced by a hole in the floor, dark, endless. Something called from below, not in words, but in emotion, grief, rage, hunger. I stepped closer, and the air changed again, heavier, thicker. It smelled of rot and wet leaves. I saw eyes in the dark, tiny, glinting, full of memory. Not animal, not human. They blinked one by one. First 2, then 4, then 16. Then they moved. A figure rose from the pit, tall, elongated, drenched in mud and blood. Its face was mine, but pulled, distorted, stretched across too wide a skull. "We are the parts you left behind," it said in my voice. "We are what you denied. We have waded through every storm." I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. The figure stepped closer. Its hands reached toward my face, fingers like roots twisting in midair. Then it split. From its body poured more versions of me, crawling, climbing, whispering, laughing. And behind them, the woman from the mirror. Her dress was soaked. Her hair floated around her like seaweed in dark water. Her eyes were empty. "You should have drowned when you had the chance," she said. Lightning crashed. The windows exploded inward. The storm entered the house. The walls pulsed. And I was pulled back into the hole, into the earth, into the storm that never ended. Darkness consumed everything. I awoke to silence. No rain, no wind. Just the hollow stillness of a world that had stopped breathing. It was pitch black. I reached for my flashlight, but my fingers touched only damp soil. The scent was overwhelming. Wet wood, mildew, and something older, metallic, like rusted iron soaked in blood. I wasn't in the basement anymore. I wasn't even sure I was in the house. I sat up slowly. Around me, darkness layered over darkness, a subterranean void where the concept of light had been forgotten. The ground pulsed faintly beneath me, alive, like I was sitting atop the chest of something vast and sleeping. I called out. My voice didn't echo. It was swallowed instantly, devoured by the heavy, wet air. Then I heard it, scratching, not from the walls, from underneath. Fingernails, clawing upward, hundreds of them. I stumbled to my feet, blind, dizzy. Every step sent a shock through the earth, like I was walking on a membrane stretched too thin. A whisper drifted through the dark. "You buried it, but it remembers." A light flickered in the distance, faint, blue, like moonlight glimpsed through fog. I followed it. The path twisted, warped. The ground sloped at impossible angles, and the walls, if they were walls, breathed in slow waves. Sometimes I saw eyes open in the dirt, tracking me, then blinking shut like shy animals. Then I found the door. It stood alone, wooden, rotted, covered in symbols I couldn't read, carved deep, bleeding something darker than sap. It didn't belong here. It belonged to another memory, one I had buried, one I had run from. I reached for the handle. My fingers froze an inch away because I heard her voice on the other side, crying, soft at first, then desperate. Please, please let me out. It was my voice, but not now. Not me now. Me as a child. I opened the door. Inside was a single room, small, white, lit by a single flickering bulb hanging from a wire. A girl sat in the center, knees hugged to her chest, skin pale, hair soaked with rain. She looked up, and I saw myself, 8 years old, trapped, terrified, eyes red from tears that had never stopped. She opened her mouth and her voice echoed like thunder. You locked me down here. You left me with her. Behind her, the shadows moved. The woman from the mirror emerged. Only now. She wasn't just watching, she was smiling, wide, eager, her arms stretched impossibly long, fingers curled like thorns. She stepped around the child me, protective, possessive, and whispered, "We made a home in your guilt. We grew strong in your silence." The door slammed shut behind me, trapped. The woman advanced, the room stretching around her. Her face flickered between versions, mother, teacher, stranger, me, every identity I had forgotten or abandoned. The light bulb exploded, darkness, then hands, too many hands, wrapped around my wrists, ankles, throat. "It's your turn to remember," she hissed, and the storm began again, inside me. I opened my eyes to the sound of breathing, not my own, not human, slow, labored, gurgling, like something ancient drawing breath through flooded lungs. I was lying on a hard surface, staring up into a ceiling that pulsed like living skin. Damp, veined. The air smelled of rot and ozone, like the sky just before a lightning strike. I sat up slowly. The room was square. No windows, no doors. Just 4 walls and a single flickering light overhead, swinging gently as if disturbed by an unseen hand. The shadows it cast danced in ways that defied the movement. There was a sound behind one of the walls, a heartbeat and a whisper. "She's almost inside now." I backed away until I touched the wall behind me, soft, damp, warm. It shuddered under my palm. Then the seams appeared. Not real seams, memories, cracks in the illusion, glimpses. I saw myself walking into this house for the first time, then younger, 8 years old, standing in the rain, watching the windows of this very place flicker with firelight. Then even younger, being pulled into a dark closet by hands too long and cold as a storm howled outside. The walls were not walls. They were the container of every memory I had tried to suppress. The house had taken them, sheltered them, fed on them. Now it was full. A hole opened in the floor. Unlike before, this one wasn't natural. It was shaped, symmetrical, a spiral descending into a cold blue glow. The same color I had seen in the mirror, the same hue as her eyes. I heard her footsteps behind me, but I didn't turn. I couldn't. The fear was paralyzing, like frost creeping up the spine. "Come home," she whispered. Her voice echoed in every wall, from above, from below, from inside me. "We've prepared your room." The light above me flickered violently. Each time it blinked, she was closer. The 4th flicker, and she stood in front of me. Her face was wrong, every feature just slightly off, as though someone had sculpted it from memory but had never seen a real human before. Her eyes didn't blink, her lips didn't move, but the voice continued. "You left the door open." I stumbled backward and fell into the spiral, down, 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 past impossible rooms, places that looked like moments in time, frozen in the glow of blue fire. I saw people I had forgotten, events I had buried, nightmares I had convinced myself were dreams. I hit the ground. It was water. I stood waist deep in a flooded chamber. Rain poured from cracks in the ceiling. The walls whispered with every drop. She stood at the far end. Not the woman now, all of them, every version, every fear, every guilt, every regret. This house is your reflection, they said in unison, and the storm is what you truly are. The water rose to my chest, to my neck. I gasped, but no air came, and the storm outside finally made its way in. The sensation of drowning wasn't sudden. It was intimate, creeping. First, the cold seeped into my socks, then climbed to my knees, thighs, chest, until I was submerged. I didn't scream, I couldn't. The water wasn't just water, it was memory. The wallpaper peeled itself like old scabs, revealing moving images behind the plaster. Scenes from my past, flickering like broken film. There was the birthday when no one showed up. The time I left her outside too long. The scream I pretended not to hear. The time I closed the bathroom door and turned up the music. I tried to breathe but inhaled guilt. Then like a switch, everything changed. I was floating through a hallway underwater, yet still inside the house. Gravity shifted, walls bent like lungs inhaling, exhaling. Furniture drifted, doors opened into nowhere. And there, at the base of the stairs, stood the woman again. Hair black as oil, skin translucent. Water dripped from her fingertips. Her eyes held no whites, just a reflection of me, multiplied endlessly, each version worse than the last. She didn't move, didn't speak. Instead, she pointed upward, to the attic. Lightning cracked through the ceiling. The attic door swung open. And in that instant, I remembered. The real storm didn't start tonight, it started then. The house birthed memories like tumors. Every step I took bled a piece of me. Up the staircase, the walls warped into faces. My own, twisted in denial, regret, and rage. The house wanted me to remember, and now it refused to let me forget. I reached the attic. Inside, she was waiting, but not standing, hanging. Ropes tied not to the beams, but to thoughts. Fragments of blame suspended in space. Each knot was a moment I had chosen to look away. Her body swayed with the wind of my guilt. I rushed forward, but my legs turned to syrup. The closer I got, the more the attic warped. It folded inward, the ceiling becoming the floor. My memories were swallowing themselves. Then she opened her eyes. "Do you remember the sound the rain made that night?" she asked. Her voice was my own. "Do you remember what you did after, or what you didn't do?" I tried to answer, but my mouth wouldn't open. She smiled, not cruelly, not warmly, just knowingly. That's what I thought. I fell into the floor and landed in a room I couldn't define. No corners, no ceiling, no up, no down. Just endless, warped space. Walls made of stretched out memories, a collage of regret. There I saw myself, at every age. As a boy trembling by the window. As a teenager crying in the dark. As an adult lying in bed, pretending everything was fine. Each version of me moved differently. One clawed at the wall, another scratched his arms raw. One simply sat and stared at the floor. They noticed me. One spoke, "We've been waiting." Another, "You were supposed to help her." The child version approached, holding something in his hand. A necklace. Her necklace. He held it out to me. When I took it, the weight pulled me down, into the next memory. I landed in a room that rotated. The walls spun slowly, like a carousel. The wind howled outside louder than before. Lightning flashed every few seconds, casting the room into snapshots of clarity. The walls were plastered with newspaper clippings. Local girl drowns during storm. Case unresolved. No foul play, say police. Except someone had written over the headlines in red ink, "You know what happened." In the middle of the room, a desk. On it, a tape recorder. It clicked on by itself. My voice. Sometimes I dream I locked the door again. Sometimes I dream I opened it. I never know which is true. The storm surged. Windows cracked. The house groaned. She was outside again, scraping the window with her nails. Watching, smiling. I opened the window and let her in. The wind didn't rush in. It withdrew, as if the house inhaled her. She stood in front of me, not a ghost, not a memory, something else. She placed her hand on my chest. I collapsed into a pitch black chamber beneath the house, below memory, below the mind. A basement that didn't exist in blueprints. There on the floor, was the seed, a small black sphere, glowing faintly. I reached out. The moment I touched it, everything came back. The night I found her body, the way I didn't call for help, the way I cleaned everything, told no one. The lie I told myself for years. It was an accident, but the seed pulsed with truth. I let her die because I didn't want to be involved, because I was afraid, because I convinced myself she'd be fine, but she wasn't, and now she was me. I emerged into my bedroom, not the one in the haunted house, the real one, or something like it. But everything was wet. The floor, the sheets, the windows. Rain poured from the ceiling as if the storm had followed me here. I walked to the mirror. She was in it, smiling. And then, without moving her lips, I heard, "We're almost done." One more thing. I opened the closet. Inside a box. Inside the box, her shoes, her diary, a lock of hair. All the things I had hidden away. I sat with them until morning. The next day I drove, miles away, to a house I hadn't visited in years. Her mother opened the door, her face aged by grief. I told her everything. Every word tasted like glass. My hands shook, my vision blurred. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just listened. When I finished, she said, "Thank you for finally letting the rain stop." I walked away in silence. The clouds followed me, but this time they didn't feel heavy. That night I returned to the house. I opened every door. Let the rain in. I lit a match. The house groaned. It didn't burn fast. It whispered, thanked me. As the flames climbed the walls, I stood outside, watching it crumble, not out of revenge, out of forgiveness. The storm passed, truly this time. For days I walked through rain, letting it soak me, letting it rinse away years of silence. Each drop a memory, each puddle a reflection of who I used to be. No more whispers, no more ghosts, just the sound of thunder and peace. It's been years. Sometimes I still see her, in puddles and mirrors and dreams. But she doesn't haunt me. She watches, she forgives. I carry the seed with me always. Not as a punishment, as a reminder. The worst storms are the ones we keep inside. But even those can pass, if we let them. And now when it rains, I sleep soundly, because I survived the house, because I remember, because I'm home.